Thanks for joining us for another edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Mitchell Ringos. A big development for the Marathon area as the environmental assessment for an open pit palladium and copper mine has been approved by a joint federal and provincial panel. The decision means that Generation Mining can now move forward with the project, and company officials tell TBT News that the mine could be in production as soon as 2025. Lee Noonan reports.
Officials with Generation Mining say local support, particularly from Bigtigong Nishnabeg and the town of Marathon, was key to getting the environmental assessment approved.
It's a huge milestone for the company. It is the key permit that we need to hopefully begin construction in the first quarter of 2023.
Marathon Mayor Rick Dumas calls it a great day for the town and the region. He's anticipating a serious economic boost for the area.
This is now going to bring the stability for our children and future economic growth in our communities. So exciting times, and it's going to make life a lot easier.
In the construction, there's probably north of 900 construction jobs that are being available, and for operations, there's about 375 to let's say 425 full-time jobs. So it's not an insignificant project.
The next steps for the company are to secure a financial investment decision and a trio of provincial permits that they expect will be approved early in the new year. If everything lines up, they could begin clearing trees this spring at the mine site, located about 10 kilometers north of Marathon. The palladium, copper, and platinum deposits identified at the site are all considered critical to the production of electric vehicles and other modern technologies.
And this is a good story for Ontario, for the critical metal strategy. It is a good outcome for the federal Canadian governments as they have a mandate to support critical metals. The province of Ontario and the federal government, we work very well together, and now we're going to have the next critical metal mine built in Canada.
The environmental assessment comes with 269 legally binding conditions to protect the environment, including waterways and at-risk species. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Ontario's Minister of Labour apologized on Wednesday for the harm suffered by miners who became ill after inhaling a form of powdered aluminum they were told would protect them. The apology comes 43 years after the last use of McIntyre powder in an Ontario mine.
This tragedy should not have happened to you. It should not have happened to your loved ones. And to each and every one of you, on behalf of the people of Ontario, we are truly sorry. Today, Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to stand with me to honor and remember the victims of this tragedy. Thank you.
From the early 40s until 1979, the aluminum substance called McIntyre powder was used as a treatment to protect miners' lungs. The first signs the treatment could be dangerous arose within a few years, but it wasn't until this past spring that the WSIB announced it would automatically approve Parkinson's claims relating to McIntyre powder. Hugh Carlson of Red Lake was exposed to the substance in the 1960s. His WSIB claim for sarcoidosis was denied, and he's now filed an appeal.
The main thing from this apology is got to be what goes forward from here. We all know the history and change it. The future is what's important.
I would like to see this as a signal that it should not be this hard for people to be believed when they are being poisoned. It should be the role of the WSIB to support workers and not be looking for reasons to deny their claims.
Bourgeois and Carlson both want to see change to the WSIB that would make it easier for future claimants to get support for occupational illnesses. OPP are investigating a suspicious death in the city of Dryden. A deceased woman was located at a residence on Government Street on Thursday following a report to police. OPP say residents can expect to see an increased police presence in the area as their crime and forensic units investigate the scene. Police are also asking the public to report any suspicious activity in that area over the past few weeks. 2 people have now been arrested in connection with the murder of a Whitefish Bay First Nation man earlier this year. OPP and Treaty 3 police have charged 29-year-old Timothy Lowe, also of Whitefish Bay, with second-degree murder. The other suspect, 23-year-old Sierra Cowley of Kenora, has been charged with accessory after the fact. 45-year-old Bouffard Cowley was reported missing on September 4th. Treaty 3 police enlisted the help of the Northwest Region OPP and their canine unit, and Cowley's remains were located the next day in the bush on the Northwest Angle 33 First Nation, located on the other side of Whitefish Bay. The two suspects have also been charged with committing an indignity to human remains. The penalty hearing for Thunder Bay Police Staff Sergeant Sean Harrison was held this week. He's facing 2 charges of misconduct for his actions during the 2015 Stacey DeBungy death investigation. Harrison's lawyers David Butt recognized his client's wrongdoing in the investigation and is seeking a 1-level demotion for 3 to 6 months, but the other lawyers are recommending harsher penalties. During the hearing, Butt stressed there was a systematic issue within the Thunder Bay Police Service, but Harrison, seen here on the left, shouldn't be scapegoated for that. Prosecution counsel Joel Dubois is looking for a harsher punishment, a demotion down to first-class constable with no chance of being a supervisor for at least a year. Dubois says he would have recommended tougher penalties, but said Harrison had a good track record outside of the DeBungy investigation and potentially could be rehabilitated. DeBungy's family lawyer, Asha James, on the other hand, believes there's only one penalty that would benefit this scenario.
It's no secret that the relationship between the Thunder Bay Police Service and Indigenous people in Thunder Bay is wrought with strife. There's been calls to disband this police service, but accountability happens in steps. The family thinks that the appropriate punishment would be termination.
James argued on day 2 that Harrison's actions showed racial bias and that he put far less than bare minimum into the DeBungy death investigation. The decision now falls on adjudicator Greg Walton. He could not provide a date for when to expect his ruling, but did say he would begin working on a decision sometime in January. Highway 11 between Nipigon and Hearst was shut down several times this week due to collisions and winter weather conditions, but the worst crash of the week occurred on Highway 17 just east of Nipigon. It happened at about 3 o'clock Tuesday afternoon near Ruby Creek. A tractor-trailer and cube van collided head-on. OPP confirmed a 61-year-old occupant of the van died at the scene, while a second occupant was taken to hospital with critical injuries. Another crash Tuesday night involving 2 transports shut down Highway 11 north of Nipigon. One person was taken to hospital with serious injuries. A third collision near Uppsala shut down Highway 17 from Chappaqua to Ignace. A tractor-trailer unit collided with a passenger vehicle, but there were no injuries reported to police. The issue of winter highway safety was raised Wednesday at Queen's Park.
In the last year, we have seen an alarming increase in fatal collisions on our roads, particularly in the north. Injuries and fatalities are twice as likely to occur on a northern highway as compared to a highway in southern Ontario. Speaker, this is unacceptable. As the winter season is upon us, drivers in my riding of Thunder Bay, Atikokan, and across the north deserve certainty that the government is taking action to put their safety first. Speaker, can the Minister of Transportation please tell the House what our government is doing to support transportation safety in northern communities?
Just recently, we created a new highway level of service that requires highways 11 and 17 in Northern Ontario to be cleared within 12 hours after a winter storm, 4 hours faster than the previous standard. But Speaker, this is not a one-and-done deal for Northern drivers. We will continue to look for even more ways to support safer and more prosperous communities in the north.
This was the view from the Nipigon River Bridge on Wednesday afternoon during one of the shutdowns of Highway 11. Transports could be seen backed up for several kilometers until the highway to Hearst could be plowed and reopened. The Rainy River DSAB is well on its way to completing their new multi-use complex at 324 Victoria in Fort Francis. The multi-million-dollar renovation of a former church is a major project for the organization, and once completed will contain 2 housing programs as well as other social services. Construction on the new basement warming center was completed in mid-November, just as winter weather set in. The 14-bed facility is open nightly and replaces a temporary warming center that was not up to code for sleeping. On the first floor, construction of a 6-bed transitional housing facility is well underway. CAO Dan McCorrick expects the space to be complete by January or February of 2023, at which point it will house a program that provides supportive accommodation for up to 2 years with the goal of helping clients gain life skills and find permanent housing. McCorrick says the goal is to create a continuum of care that helps people stay safe and get off the streets. He says the DSAB wanted to use social service relief funding to implement a long-term program rather than stopgap measures.
We rented a motel for, I think, 24 people, and we rented it for 6 weeks, and that was close to $40,000. So in the long term, this investment makes a lot more sense. Plus, it's permanent, and hopefully we'll be here for many years to come.
The building also houses the CMHA's Safe Bed facility, which offers a 30-day residential program for people in crises. That program launched last November in partnership with the OPP and Treaty 3 Police. The third floor is being converted into office and meeting space for social service organizations. The entire building will be wheelchair accessible once construction of the elevator is complete. And after the break, local food banks are under pressure due to growing demand. The head of the Regional Food Distribution Association says the pressure being applied to area food banks due to the growing number of people who can't afford healthy meals is alarming, and it's time to have serious conversations with municipal and senior levels of government. Executive Director of Northwestern Ontario Regional Food Distribution, Volker Krom, says in the last year alone, Thunder Bay area food banks have seen an 18 to 25% increase in usage, and some tripled the number of visitors they serve. Overall, about 9,000 people in the region currently rely on food banks every month, including 5,000 in Thunder Bay. Krom says change is needed now, or they'll have to downsize.
But at some point, our organization is going to have to say, we can't do this anymore. So we'll either have to scale back on the number of food banks that we serve, or the number of communities that we serve, or really start shrinking the size of our hampers.
This comes on the same day that Feed Ontario released its 2022 Hunger Report, which shows an increase of 15% in food bank usage across the province over the last 3 years. Executive Director Carolyn Stewart says this needs to be addressed.
Do we want to see these numbers doubles, or do we want to say this year was the year that we took a stand and ensured that good public policy was implemented to make sure the numbers of people accessing food banks started to reduce?
Crum says this is the time of the year that the RFDA gets most of its donations, but because some of the food is going north to remote communities, along with extra demand in the city, their stock is starting to deplete.
We're going to sit down and say, okay, we're going to be in a real pinch in the new year. The giving season is really important, but January, February, and March, when people don't give anymore, we're going to be desperate.
Crom says he has been traveling to communities throughout the region to gain partners and will be bringing a deputation to City Hall on December 12th. Starting in May, calling your local friends and loved ones will take just a little bit longer, as anyone with an 807 phone number will have to start dialing all 10 digits to get through. The change is due to an order by the CRTC for all telecom service providers in Canada to transition to 10-digit local calling by May of 2023. The change will allow the introduction of a new 988 number for mental health crisis and suicide prevention services, which will come online nationwide in November of 2023. While the 10-digit dialing may take time for some people to get used to, TBTEL spokesperson Jamie Smith says they'll be launching an awareness campaign in the coming weeks.
At a certain point, if you dial the 7 digits, it's going to say, hey, you can make this call now, but as of this date, you're going to have to do 10 digits. I think it's just going to take a bit of some getting used to. You know, if you talk to people in other cities, this has been sort of par for the course for a long time, but for people in our community, it's just going to take a bit of awareness and in some cases some updating of equipment and things like that.
The recorded reminders will begin on April 1st of next year, and then as of May 31st, calls dialed without the 807 area code will not be connected. The Ford government's controversial Bill 124, which caps the wages of public sector workers, is unconstitutional according to an Ontario Superior Court ruling this week. A local union leader who represents about 4,000 affected workers in our region calls it a big win. But Unifor's Carrie Jefford cautions that the fight is far from over as the government intends to appeal the ruling.
Kill that bill! Kill that bill! Public sector employees across the province got their wish on Tuesday when an Ontario court struck down Bill 124, which limits those workers to 1% annual wage increases.
They found that it was unconstitutional, and that that is a big win.
With inflationary pressures higher than ever before, local Unifor president Carrie Jefford says the wage cap has forced many of her members to turn to food banks to feed their families.
Repeal Bill 124.
NDP member Lise Vaugeois has also spoken out against the bill since she took office earlier this year.
It's definitely a cause for celebration. Workers, public service workers across the province have been really begging to have this bill rescinded since it was imposed in 2019.
Thunder Bay Atikokan's PC member Kevin Holland issued just this simple statement in response to the court ruling, echoing the words of his government. Quote, "We are reviewing the decision. Our intention is to appeal." Jefford notes that appeal process could take a year or more, and she fears Unifor will continue to be bound by Bill 124 in upcoming contract negotiations, delaying staffing relief for already struggling sectors like healthcare and education.
We're seeing members leave in droves to the private sector and right out of healthcare and education or public services altogether. And those are gaps that we'll never recover from.
Good morning, everybody. A report from Ontario's Financial Accountability Officer indicates that in the first half of this year, the province spent $859 million less on health care than it had budgeted, and $500 million less on public health. The government insists it's not trying to push the public system to the brink of failure in order to usher in privatized care. But Jefford believes that's the only logical conclusion.
When you starve the system, the public system, so much that it starts to crumble in on itself, and the public and general people of Ontario don't recognize the greater danger here. It's a for-profit sector. That's what they're looking at. That's what he's designing.
She says the unions will continue to fight. Ryan Bonazzo, TBT News.
Up next, a shipment of toys destined for remote First Nations has landed in Thunder Bay. A Hercules plane loaded with thousands of toys touched down at the Thunder Bay Airport Friday. It's part of the Toys for the North campaign, and the gifts will soon be delivered by Santa to 3 remote First Nations in the Northwest. Celios Bellos has that story.
This C-130 Hercules aircraft landed at Thunder Bay Airport Friday morning, bringing with it 12 pallets worth of toys, basic need items, and winter wear, all earmarked for Poplar Hill, Sashago Lake, and Webequie First Nations. This is the 8th annual Toys for the North campaign as the RCMP and Gardewine Transportation partner with North Star Air to make it all happen. Karen Matson with North Star Air says everyone was even more excited to help out this year, considering how difficult COVID has been on remote communities.
Of course, with the pandemic and, trouble getting out of communities, to a bigger center to do their shopping, that doesn't happen, right? So the RCMP, Gardewine, and North Star, we are thrilled that we can be distributing these toys on behalf of the Canadian Toy Association.
The donations are double that of last year and will be brought to the 3 communities between December 12th and 18th. Before that, they'll be sorted and packaged at the Thunder Bay Gardewine headquarters. RCMP Corporal Daryl Warwick says everyone involved is looking forward to when they can finally get the gifts into the hands of the kids up north.
And every year we see an increase in the quality of the toys, the number of toys. And when we do go up to the north, it's very rewarding to hand these toys out to the children and see the joy it brings them and the goodwill it does to, between everybody in the community. So it's a great event to be a part of, and we're just happy to be here and be with everybody for this.
Well, the toys have been unloaded and the Hercules is taking off. The work's just begun. The toys will now be packaged before being sent out to the 3 First Nations communities later this month. No doubt, bringing Christmas joy to the north. Vasilios Bellows, TBT News.
Dryden-based company Agritech North has been on a winning streak lately, bringing in a host of prizes and awards for their hydroponic farming company, which aims to address food insecurity in the north with year-round local produce. Lee Noonan reports.
No matter the weather, Agritech North can provide fresh, locally grown produce to customers in Dryden, Kenora, and Sioux Lookout. Recently, CEO Ben Fagan and his fiancée, master grower Fabian Velez, took home the $100,000 grand prize on APTN's Bear's Lair, a Dragon's Den-style Indigenous business competition.
The $100,000 from Bear's Lair is intended to match other programs in order to get us a solar system for the roof here, which will lower our cost to produce by 20% and get our leafy greens onto the wholesale market.
Agritech also brought home the Northwestern Ontario Innovation Centre's 2022 Innovative Project of the Year Award and the Dryden Chamber of Commerce Awards for Young Business Leader and Business of the Year. Fagan is thrilled to be getting recognition at the national, regional, and local levels. He says the company is currently operating at about half capacity as they continue to test plant varieties and methods and work towards expanding into a new space.
We are growing around 79 different varieties right now. We were growing around 103, only because we're testing which are the best varieties, which ones work optimal in this type of setting. Strawberries, blueberries, kale, arugula, spinach, lettuces. We're testing it all.
Ultimately, they hope to develop a model for indoor farming that could be implemented by rural and remote communities in the north.
Our next plan is to feed as many people as we can, make sure everyone has a complete nutrition in front of them and they don't have to choose food that they don't want because of the amount of money they have. That the same amount of money, they can still get something that's proper, nutritious, and fresh.
Same price as the grocery store or cheaper.
Yeah.
They're aiming to have the first remote community farm starting up and to move from their current pilot facility into a larger one in the next 2 to 3 years. And in the meantime, their produce is available to customers in the region through the Agritech North website. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
And that's all the time we have for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.